It began as an ordinary day in the small mining town of Silver Creek. The miners worked tirelessly, digging deeper into the earth to uncover precious metals. But no one could have guessed what they were about to find. Deep underground, a strange metallic structure was uncovered. At first, they thought it was an old machine or maybe a forgotten storage vault. But it was far too large and far too alien. Jack Harper, a seasoned miner with a curious mind, was the first to notice the strange carvings on the walls of the structure. "This ain't no natural formation," he muttered, running his hand over the smooth, cold surface. The markings glowed faintly under his flashlight, like they were alive. His curiosity got the better of him, and he called for the foreman. Within hours, scientists from the government were swarming the site. The mine was shut down, and Silver Creek was put under strict lockdown. No one could leave, and no one could enter. The townspeople were nervous, but they had no idea that the secret beneath their feet was far more terrifying than anything they could imagine. Dr. Evelyn Carter, an archaeologist specializing in ancient symbols, was flown in to study the carvings. As soon as she saw them, her heart sank. They weren't just symbols, they were warnings. "This isn't a vault," she whispered to herself. "It's a cage." The deeper the team explored, the more unsettling the discovery became. The metallic walls extended for miles underground, forming a massive structure. It wasn't human-made. It couldn't have been. The air inside felt thick, as if something ancient and dangerous was watching. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't supposed to be there. On the third day, the team found a central chamber. In the center stood a large obelisk covered in glowing blue veins. It pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. Jack, who had been kept on site to guide the team through the tunnels, couldn't help but feel drawn to it. "It's alive, isn't it?" he asked Evelyn. Evelyn didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the carvings at the base of the obelisk. They told a story of powerful alien beings who had been banished to Earth thousands of years ago. The planet had been turned into a prison, locked away from the rest of the galaxy. But there was a warning, repeated over and over: do not disturb the seal. The prisoners must never be freed. Jack's voice broke her concentration. "Doctor, look." The obelisk's veins were glowing brighter. The faint hum that had filled the chamber was now a low rumble. Something was happening. "Get out!" Evelyn shouted. "We've triggered something." But it was too late. The ground shook violently, and cracks spread across the walls. A deafening roar echoed through the tunnels, a sound so deep and primal that it sent shivers down their spines. Jack grabbed Evelyn's arm and pulled her out of the chamber just as the obelisk began to crack open. Above ground, the townspeople felt the quake too. Buildings trembled, and windows shattered. In the mine, Evelyn and Jack stumbled into the open air, gasping for breath. The other scientists weren't so lucky. They were still trapped below when the ground caved in. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the noise. A terrible, otherworldly howl erupted from the collapsed mine. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything they had ever heard before. The townspeople gathered, terrified and confused. "What's happening?" one woman cried. "What did you find down there?" Before Evelyn could respond, the ground beneath their feet cracked again. Something massive was moving beneath the surface. Shadows began to rise from the rubble shapes that didn't belong to this world. They were tall, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. "They're awake," Evelyn whispered. The creatures emerged, their movements slow and deliberate. They looked at the humans as if they were insects, unworthy of notice. One of them raised a hand, and with a simple gesture, the power lines in the town exploded. Darkness fell over Silver Creek. Panic spread like wildfire. People ran, screaming as the creatures began to advance. Jack grabbed Evelyn and pulled her toward his truck. "We've got to get out of here," he shouted. Evelyn shook her head. "We can't outrun them. They'll destroy everything if we don't stop them." "But how?" Jack demanded. Evelyn remembered the carvings. The seal could be restored, but it required a sacrifice. Someone had to go back down into the mine and activate the failsafe built into the obelisk. "I'll do it," she said firmly. Jack refused to let her go alone. Together, they returned to the mine, now a gaping pit filled with darkness and the echoes of alien growls. The creatures hadn't noticed them yet, but it was only a matter of time. As they reached the chamber, Evelyn quickly deciphered the controls on the obelisk. The failsafe was risky. It would seal the prison but might bury them alive in the process. "No time to think," Evelyn said. "Do it now!" Jack hit the switch. The obelisk roared to life, sending a shockwave through the ground. Above, the creatures screamed as the seal began to pull them back underground. The chamber started collapsing around Jack and Evelyn. They barely escaped with their lives. When they emerged from the rubble, the creatures were gone and the ground was still. Silver Creek was destroyed, but humanity was safe for now. Evelyn looked at Jack and said, "We were never supposed to find this place. And we can never let anyone find it again." Jack nodded, his face pale. "But what if they come back?" Evelyn didn't answer. Deep down, she knew the truth. The seal was only temporary, and the prisoners were still waiting. It all began with a faint, mysterious signal from deep space. At first, NASA thought it was just cosmic noise, but the patterns were too precise to be random. A young scientist named Rachel Morrison was the first to crack the code. She stared at her computer screen in disbelief as the message translated itself. "Earth is waking up. Seal it again." Rachel rushed to show her discovery to her supervisor, Dr. Carter, but he dismissed it as a glitch. "Probably some prank," he said, waving it off. Yet, Rachel couldn't let it go. The message haunted her. Who sent it? And what did they mean by waking up a week later? The same signal appeared again, this time stronger and more urgent. Rachel took a risk and leaked her findings to a group of private researchers. One of them, an eccentric billionaire named Victor Lang, became fascinated. He funded a secret mission to uncover the truth, inviting Rachel to join him. Within days, Rachel found herself aboard a state-of-the-art spacecraft, heading for the source of the signal. It wasn't far, just beyond Earth's orbit. What they discovered there shocked them all. Floating silently in the void was a massive, ancient satellite. Its surface was covered in alien writing, unlike anything humans had ever seen. "This isn't human," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. Victor grinned. "This could be the greatest discovery in history. Let's bring it on board." Against Rachel's warnings, the satellite was brought into their ship. As soon as it was connected to their systems, it activated. Lights flickered, and a deep mechanical voice echoed throughout the ship. "The chains are breaking. Humanity must be contained." Suddenly, the ship's engines shut down, and an unknown force pulled them into Earth's atmosphere. They crash-landed in the desert, far from civilization. The satellite, still intact, emitted a strange energy that seemed to seep into the ground. Rachel and Victor emerged from the wreckage, shaken but alive. The desert around them began to shift unnaturally, rocks moved on their own, and the air grew heavy with a strange hum. It was as if the Earth itself was responding to the satellite. "We need to shut it down," Rachel said. Victor shook his head. "Are you kidding? This thing is worth billions. We can study it, learn from it." Before they could argue further, a shadow fell over them. A massive ship descended from the sky, its sleek design unlike anything on Earth. The craft landed, and out stepped tall, slender beings with glowing eyes. Rachel froze. Aliens. One of them, draped in silver armor, stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "You have awakened the chains," it said coldly. "You should not have done this." Victor, ever the businessman, tried to negotiate. "Wait. We didn't mean any harm. This is a scientific mission." The alien raised a hand, and Victor was thrown backward by an invisible force. "Silence," it commanded. "Earth was quarantined for a reason. Your kind were never meant to leave." Rachel stepped forward cautiously. "What do you mean? What is this satellite? What are these?" "Chains." The alien regarded her for a moment before replying. "Earth is not your home. It is your prison. Long ago, your ancestors committed unspeakable crimes across the galaxy. They were banished here, and the planet was sealed to ensure they could never escape." Rachel's mind raced. "You're saying humanity? We're the prisoners? The alien nodded. But now the seal is breaking. If the chains fall, your kind will bring chaos to the stars once again. We cannot allow that to happen. Suddenly, the satellite began to pulse with a blinding blue light. The ground beneath them cracked, and a low, rumbling sound filled the air. The seal is weakening, the alien shouted. Rachel realized that the satellite was part of the chains keeping Earth contained. But something or someone was trying to break it. We can fix this, she said desperately. Tell us how to stop it. The alien hesitated, then pointed to the satellite. It can only be deactivated from within. But if you fail, Earth will be destroyed to prevent the prisoners from escaping. Victor, bruised but alive, pushed himself to his feet. You're not seriously listening to them, are you? This is our chance to break free. Rachel ignored him. She climbed onto the satellite, searching for a way inside. The alien provided guidance, its voice steady but urgent. You must act quickly. The chains are nearly broken. Inside the satellite, Rachel found a control panel covered in glowing symbols. Her heart pounded as she tried to make sense of them. The humming grew louder, and the walls began to shake. Rachel, stop! Victor yelled from outside. If you do this, you're dooming us to stay here forever. She hesitated. What if he was right? What if humanity deserved a chance to leave Earth? But then she remembered the alien's warning. If the chains broke, countless lives across the galaxy would be at risk. With trembling hands, she activated the controls. The satellite roared to life, and a surge of energy shot into the sky. The cracks in the ground sealed, and the pulsing light faded. Outside, the alien nodded solemnly. You have restored the chains. The galaxy is safe for now. Rachel stepped out of the satellite, exhausted but relieved. Victor glared at her, his face filled with anger. You've condemned us all, he spat. No, Rachel said quietly. I saved us. As the alien ship prepared to leave, the leader turned to Rachel one last time. The seal will not last forever. When the day comes. With that, the aliens vanished, leaving Rachel and Victor alone in the quiet desert. Above them, the stars shone brightly, a reminder of the freedom humanity might never have. And deep beneath the earth, the chains held for now. The desert was a quiet, endless sea of sand, but deep beneath its surface lay secrets that should never have been found. A team of explorers, led by Dr. Mark Collins, stumbled upon something extraordinary, a massive, key-shaped artifact buried in the sand. The artifact was unlike anything they had ever seen, carved from a black metallic material that seemed to absorb light. This isn't just some ancient relic, Mark whispered, running his hand over the smooth, cold surface. This is something far older, and far more dangerous. The artifact hummed faintly, almost like it was alive. The team worked quickly to unearth it, their excitement outweighing their caution. By nightfall, they had it fully uncovered. The artifact was massive, at least 15 feet long, and covered in strange symbols that no one could read. This thing looks like a key, said Emily, one of the younger archaeologists. She was half joking, but Mark didn't laugh. Let's get it back to the lab, he said, uneasy but curious. The key wakes up back at the research facility. The artifact was placed in a secure lab. Mark and his team began analyzing it, but no one could figure out what it was made of or what purpose it served. Days turned into weeks, and the artifact remained silent, almost as if it were waiting. Then, one night, it woke up. Mark was in his office, studying photographs of the strange symbols when the lights flickered. A low, vibrating hum filled the building. He rushed to the lab and found Emily and the rest of the team staring at the artifact in shock. The symbols on the key were glowing. A faint blue light pulsed through its surface, and the hum grew louder, vibrating through the air. Suddenly, a sharp, mechanical voice echoed through the room. The seal is breaking. What seal? Emily asked, her voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, the key emitted a blinding light. The ground beneath their feet shook violently, and a deep crack split the floor. The team scrambled to escape as the artifact unleashed a massive energy wave. When the chaos settled, the artifact was still glowing, but now something else had changed. A low rumble echoed from deep underground, as if something huge was shifting beneath the earth. Mark's face was pale. "We've unlocked something," he said. "Something we weren't meant to." The prisoners emerged the next day. Strange phenomena began to occur around the research facility. The skies darkened unnaturally, and the wind carried an eerie metallic scent. Wildlife in the area disappeared, and the ground trembled every few hours. Then came the figures. They rose from the cracks in the earth, tall, shadowy beings with glowing eyes. Their forms were sleek and humanoid, but their movements were unnatural, like they didn't belong in this world. The air around them seemed to ripple with energy. Mark and Emily watched from a distance as the beings emerged, their hearts pounding with fear. "What are they?" Emily whispered. Mark's mind raced as he remembered the artifact's warning, "The seal is breaking." He realized now that the key hadn't been a relic, it had been a lock, and they had just opened it. The beings didn't speak, but their intentions were clear. They began moving toward the nearby towns, their presence causing the air to vibrate and machines to malfunction. Wherever they passed, life seemed to drain away, plants withered, and the land grew barren. "A desperate plan, we have to stop them," Mark said, his voice firm despite the fear in his chest. Emily shook her head. "How?" "We don't even know what they are." Mark pointed to the artifact. "That key was meant to keep them locked away. If we can figure out how it works, maybe we can reverse it." With no time to lose, the team began searching through their notes, trying to decode the symbols on the artifact. The beings were getting closer to the towns, and reports of strange, deadly phenomena were spreading across the region. As they worked, Mark discovered something chilling in the symbols. "These aren't just prisoners," he said. "They're conquerors. They were locked here because they destroyed their own world. If we don't stop them, they'll do the same to ours." Emily's hands trembled as she studied the symbols. "There's a failsafe," she said. "But it requires a huge energy source, something big enough to power the key and reseal the prison." Mark's eyes widened. "The facility's power core. We can use it." The final sacrifice of plan was risky. The power core was unstable, and using it to activate the key could destroy the entire facility and everyone inside. But there was no other choice. Mark and Emily worked together to connect the power core to the artifact. As they activated the system, the artifact began to glow brighter than ever, its hum rising to a deafening pitch. The shadowy beings sensed the activation and turned their attention toward the facility. They moved quickly, their glowing eyes fixed on the building. "Keep them back," Mark shouted as Emily worked frantically to stabilize the energy transfer. The beings reached the facility just as the artifact unleashed its full power. A massive wave of blue light erupted from the key, spreading across the land. The beings let out a terrible, unearthly scream as they were pulled back into the cracks from which they had emerged. The ground trembled violently, and the facility began to collapse. Emily screamed as the control panel exploded, but Mark grabbed her and pulled her to safety. They barely escaped as the building crumbled behind them. When the dust settled, the artifact was gone, and the cracks in the earth had sealed. The land was quiet once more. A lasting warning mark, and Emily stood in the ruins of the facility, their faces pale and exhausted. "Do you think it's over?" Emily asked. Mark looked at the horizon, where the desert stretched endlessly. "For now," he said. "But that key wasn't the only one. There are more locks out there. And if they're ever open—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The silence of the desert was answer enough. The prison was enormous, its walls stretching high into the sky, casting long shadows over the desolate land. It was a place where the worst criminals were sent, those whose crimes were so unforgivable that no one wanted to remember their names. But for the inmates inside, there was one thing that they could never forget: the warden. Warden Henry Ashford was a man of few words. His presence was like a storm, calm and quiet on the surface, but deadly when provoked. He ran the prison with an iron fist, enforcing the rules without mercy. The prisoners feared him, and even the guards treated him with a sense of awe and respect. No one ever questioned his methods. Until one day, something happened that would change everything. It started with a new inmate. His name was Marcus, a man who had been convicted of a crime so terrible that no one dared to speak of it. He arrived in the middle of the night, escorted by armed guards. His face was hidden behind a mask, and his hands were shackled tightly, as though they feared him more than any other prisoner. The warden watched from his office as Marcus was led through the gates. There was something about this man that piqued his interest, though he couldn't quite place it. Something in his eyes seemed familiar. It was rumored that the cell was cursed, that those who were locked inside never saw the light of day again. But Marcus wasn't like the other prisoners. He didn't seem scared. In fact, he almost seemed calm. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. The guards started reporting that their security systems were malfunctioning. The cameras blinked in and out, and doors that were supposed to be locked opened on their own. At first, no one thought much of it. Prison technology was old, after all. But when one of the guards found a key that didn't belong to anyone, things started to get more suspicious. That's when Warden Ashford decided to investigate. He knew that something wasn't right. The security breach was too calculated, too precise. As he walked through the cold, sterile hallways of the prison, his mind raced. Who could be responsible? And why now? He arrived at Marcus's cell just as the sun set. The prisoner was sitting on his bed, staring at the wall. He didn't move when the warden approached the bars. "You," Ashford said, his voice cold. "What are you playing at?" Marcus turned slowly, meeting the warden's gaze. There was no fear in his eyes, only calm certainty. "You're not as safe as you think," he said softly. "None of you are." The warden's jaw tightened. He had seen many men try to break the rules, but this one was different. He was too confident, too calm. It unsettled him. "Listen carefully," Ashford continued, his voice low and threatening. "I run this prison. No one escapes. No one gets out. Not while I'm in charge." Marcus stood and walked slowly to the bars. "You're wrong," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "You don't run this place. You're just the keeper of the cage. You don't know what's really here." The warden frowned. This was getting ridiculous. "What are you talking about? You think you can escape? You think anyone in here can?" Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the far corner of the cell, where something was hidden behind the shadows. With a single, deliberate movement, he reached out and pulled a piece of paper from the wall, revealing a hidden compartment. The warden's eyes widened as he saw what Marcus had uncovered, a series of old, faded maps. Maps of the prison, but they weren't just ordinary blueprints. These maps were different. They showed hidden rooms, secret passageways, places that didn't exist in the prison's official records. Marcus handed the map through the bars. "You've been kept in the dark, Warden," he said. "You've been a part of something much bigger than you can understand. And now, it's all coming undone." The warden hesitated, his mind racing. These maps were decades old. He had never seen them before, and there was something about them that made him feel uneasy. "I'm not here to play games with you," Ashford said, trying to maintain control. "What is this? What are you trying to tell me?" Marcus smiled faintly. "You don't know the history of this prison, do you? It's not just a place for criminals. It was built on something ancient, something powerful. And you've been guarding it for years, without even knowing it." The warden's heart skipped a beat. He had heard rumors, but he had always dismissed them as myth stories told by prisoners to scare each other. But now, with the map in his hands, those stories didn't seem so far-fetched. "What are you saying?" Ashford demanded, his voice growing more frantic. Marcus stepped back, his smile widening. "The truth, Warden. The truth that you've been hiding from. The prison is more than just a place to lock people up. It's a trap. And you've been the one holding the key all along." Before the warden could respond, the ground shook. A loud, hollow noise echoed from deep within the prison, shaking the walls. The lights flickered, and the air grew heavy with a sense of impending doom. "It's happening," Marcus whispered, almost to himself. "The warden's secret. It's waking up." Suddenly, the prison doors slammed shut. The warden ran toward the control panel, but it was too late. The maps, The hidden rooms, everything was becoming real. The prison was no longer a place of confinement. It was a prison for something far darker, something that had been locked away for centuries. And now, it was free. The world had changed. It was no longer the bustling planet it once was now. It was quiet, desolate. Earth's cities had crumbled under the weight of years of war, climate collapse, and the onslaught of mysterious alien forces. Humanity had fought to survive, but now the battle was almost lost. The air was thick with a strange, toxic haze, and the skies were permanently shadowed by the ships that loomed overhead. I in the ruins of what used to be New York City, a group of survivors gathered in a hidden underground bunker. They were the last of humanity's hope. Among them was a man named Ethan Cross, a former scientist, now leading this ragtag group with one mission in mind: to escape Earth. "We can't stay here any longer," Ethan said, his voice raspy but determined. "If we don't get off this planet soon, there won't be anything left to save." The others nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. They had been living in fear for too long, hiding from the alien forces that now controlled the Earth. But Ethan had a plan, a dangerous, almost impossible plan, but it was their only shot. Ethan turned to Mara, the brilliant engineer who had been working tirelessly on their only means of escape, a small, experimental spacecraft. It was designed to get them out of Earth's atmosphere and into deep space, but it had never been tested. There were too many unknowns, and not everyone believed it would work. "Is it ready?" Ethan asked, his eyes focused on Mara. She wiped the sweat from her brow and gave him a determined nod. "It's ready. It's risky, but we've built it to last long enough to escape Earth's gravity. We'll have to make repairs on the way, but we can make it." Mara's words, though reassuring, did little to ease the tension in the air. The stakes were too high, and their time was running out. Outside, the alien ships could be seen in the distance, their dark, ominous silhouettes gliding across the sky. They were searching for any signs of life, but the bunker had been carefully hidden for months. If they wanted to escape, it had to be now. Ethan turned to the rest of the group. "Everyone, gear up. We leave in 30 minutes. The survivors scrambled to gather their things: water, food, weapons, anything they could carry. Ethan's mind raced as he thought about the journey ahead. The ship they had built was small, too small for all of them. Only 5 would fit, and that meant some tough decisions had to be made. "I'll stay behind," said Simon, one of the group members, his voice steady. "I'll cover your escape. You'll need a distraction when the aliens arrive." "I won't make it, but you will." Ethan turned to him, his face grim. "We'll all make it, Simon. No one is staying behind." But Simon only smiled sadly. "It's the only way, Ethan. Don't argue with me. We both know it." Before Ethan could protest, Simon slipped away, disappearing into the shadows of the bunker. Ethan's heart sank. He didn't want to lose anyone, but Simon was right. The rest of them had to survive. The countdown began. Time was running out. They made their way to the launch site, an old abandoned military base a few miles from their shelter. The ship, a sleek silver craft, stood gleaming in the dim light. It looked fragile, but it was their only chance. Mara was already at the controls, her fingers flying over the buttons as she made final adjustments. "We're good to go," Mara said, glancing up at Ethan. "We have one shot at this. The launch sequence will be initiated in 5 minutes." Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath. He turned to the others, his face set with determination. "We've got this. We get in that ship, we get to space, and we survive. Together." With that, they climbed into the ship. The hatch closed with a soft hiss, sealing them inside. The interior was cramped, but it was all they needed. The engines hummed to life, and the ship slowly lifted off the ground. For a moment, it felt as if the Earth was fighting to hold them back, the gravitational pull pressing them down. But then the ship broke through, shooting into the sky. They were free. But the victory was short-lived. As the ship ascended, the sky above them grew darker. Ethan looked out the small porthole and saw the alien ships, massive and menacing, closing in on them. They had been spotted. "They're coming," Mara said, her voice tense. "They know we're leaving." Ethan's grip tightened on the armrest. "We can outrun them." But even as he said the words, he knew it wasn't that simple. The alien ships were faster, more powerful, and they wouldn't stop until they had wiped out every last human. The ship shook violently as it pushed through the atmosphere, leaving Earth behind. But just as they thought they were safe, the ship's alarms began blaring. "We've been hit," shouted Mara. "One of the engines is malfunctioning. We're losing altitude." The craft shook again, and a loud bang echoed through the cabin. Ethan's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. They were still too close to the Earth. If they didn't make it to the outer orbit, they'd be sitting ducks. "We need to fix it. Now," Ethan ordered. Mara worked quickly, trying to stabilize the engines, while the others did their best to keep calm. The alien ships were closing in fast, their weapons charging. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, with a loud roar, the ship's engines fired back to life. They had made it. The craft surged forward, breaking free from Earth's atmosphere and heading into the dark, unknown reaches of space. The alien ships were left behind, their pursuit slowing as the humans ventured deeper into the void. But the feeling of victory was fleeting. They had escaped Earth, but they had no idea what awaited them in the vastness of space. There were still so many unanswered questions. What had happened to their home? Who were the aliens? And more importantly, what did they want? Ethan stared out into the infinite blackness of space, his mind racing. "We've escaped," he said quietly. "But the real fight is just beginning."